Please, my child is hungry." The waitress whispered those words while standing in the restaurant's kitchen, holding a small paper bag she had hoped to take home. Instead of compassion, the manager fired her on the spot, ordering her to leave the restaurant immediately. She walked outside with tears in her eyes, believing she had lost the only job keeping her little daughter fed. But she had no idea that a billionaire CEO sitting quietly in the dining room had witnessed everything, and what he did next would change her life forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and helping people when they are struggling, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to spread kindness. Every like, comment, and subscription helps us share more stories that remind us there is still goodness in the world. Maria Thompson was a 29-year-old waitress working at an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. She was a single mother raising her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, in a small rented apartment several bus stops away. Maria woke before sunrise every morning, prepared Lily for school, worked long shifts, and returned home late at night with aching feet. She never complained to her daughter. She always smiled, even when there was barely enough food in the kitchen. Maria had learned how to stretch a small grocery bag across several days, how to turn leftovers into dinner, and how to tell Lily that she wasn't hungry when the truth was that she was saving the last portion for her child. That Friday had been especially difficult. Maria had received a notice that her rent was overdue, and her paycheck was still several days away. When she opened the refrigerator that morning, she found almost nothing inside. There was half a bottle of milk and a small piece of bread. She gave Lily the bread before school and promised that they would have a proper dinner that evening. But as the hours passed, Maria became increasingly worried because she had no money left. The restaurant where she worked served wealthy customers who ordered expensive meals without looking at the prices. That afternoon, several plates of untouched food were being cleared from a private dining area. Maria watched the kitchen staff throw away perfectly good food. She knew she could not take it without permission, but all she could think about was Lily waiting at home. Finally, she quietly placed a small portion of untouched food into a paper container, planning to take it home after her shift. She had barely stepped into the staff hallway when the restaurant manager, Richard, saw the container in her hands. Richard was known for being strict and cared deeply about the restaurant's reputation. He immediately accused Maria of stealing. She tried to explain that the food was being discarded and that she only wanted to take it home because her daughter was hungry. Her voice trembled as she begged him to understand. But Richard showed no compassion. He told her that company rules were company rules and fired her in front of 2 other employees. Maria stood frozen for a moment. Losing the food was painful, but losing her job was terrifying. She begged for another chance, explaining that she had a child at home and needed the paycheck. Richard simply told her to collect her belongings and leave. Maria walked toward the back exit holding her small handbag, trying desperately not to cry in front of the other workers. What Maria didn't know was that a man sitting alone at a table near the hallway had heard everything. His name was Jonathan Reed, a 42-year-old billionaire CEO who owned several companies across the city. He had come to the restaurant for a private business meeting, but the conversation he overheard had affected him more than anything discussed at the meeting. Jonathan had grown up with a single mother who had once worked 2 jobs to keep food on their table. He knew what it felt like to watch someone struggle while pretending everything was fine. Jonathan quietly asked the server about Maria and learned what had happened. He then asked the manager to come to his table. Richard arrived expecting a complaint about the food, but Jonathan calmly asked why an employee had been fired for taking food that was going to be thrown away. Richard defended the decision and said that allowing one employee to take food would create a problem for the entire restaurant. Jonathan looked toward the back door where Maria had disappeared and reminded Richard that rules existed to protect people, not to remove compassion from the workplace. He asked whether the restaurant had any program for donating leftover food to local shelters or employees who needed it. Richard had no answer. Jonathan left the restaurant, but he didn't leave Maria behind. The next morning, Maria sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone. She had already applied for 3 jobs and received no response. Lily sat beside her eating the last piece of bread. Maria smiled and told her daughter everything would be okay, even though she had no idea how she would pay the rent. Then someone knocked on the apartment door. Maria opened it and found Jonathan standing outside with a woman from his company's community support department. He didn't arrive with cameras, reporters, or an enormous check. Instead, he brought groceries and a job offer. He explained that one of his companies was opening a new cafeteria and needed someone trustworthy to manage its front-of-house operations. He had learned about Maria's work history and knew she had spent years serving people with patience and dignity. Maria initially refused the financial help, saying she didn't want charity. Jonathan smiled and told her the job was not charity. He was offering her an opportunity because he believed she deserved one. He also offered to cover Lily's school meal program for the remainder of the year, but only after Maria agreed that she would one day help another struggling family when she had the ability to do so. Months passed, and Maria's life slowly changed. Her new job paid better, offered stable hours, and allowed her to spend more evenings with Lily. She moved into a safer apartment and began saving money. But she never forgot the humiliation of that day in the restaurant. Jonathan also changed. He began working with local restaurants and food suppliers to create a food donation program that collected safe, untouched surplus meals and delivered them to families and community centers. What started as one woman's desperate request for food eventually became a citywide initiative helping thousands of people. One afternoon, Maria was invited to a community event where Jonathan announced the program publicly. Standing before a crowd, he explained that the idea had started with a waitress who had been punished for trying to feed her child. Maria stood quietly in the audience with Lily holding her hand. Jonathan then invited Maria onto the stage. Instead of presenting her with a trophy or a large check, he simply thanked her for reminding him that kindness sometimes begins with noticing one person's pain. Maria looked at her daughter and fought back tears. She finally understood that the worst day of her life had become the beginning of something much bigger than herself. Lily later asked her mother why Jonathan had helped them. Maria hugged her tightly and explained that sometimes people choose to help because they remember what it felt like when someone once helped them. If this story touched your heart, please don't just watch and scroll away. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to spread kindness. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people and reminds others that compassion can still make a difference. Before we end, I have one special request for you. Please comment "No child should go hungry" if you believe every child deserves food, dignity, and a chance at a better tomorrow. Because Maria thought she had lost everything when she walked out of that restaurant with tears in her eyes. She didn't know that someone had been watching, someone who understood her struggle, and someone who would turn one painful moment into a movement of kindness. Sometimes a person doesn't need someone to save their entire life. Sometimes they simply need one person to see their struggle, believe in them, and give them one more chance.